a deal dictates things, you know? So say someone has a deal, and what really worked for me last year, people would have deals and the numbers didn't work unless the seller got very creative and carried back like either a promissory note in one or like a equity position in another. And it's just, your interest rates are high. So how can we make this work? Like, I'm not going to just sit on the sidelines. I get bored with stuff like that, right? And I'm not big enough yet to just be like, I'm going to sit on the sidelines. Ha ha ha. I'm like, no, let's look at deals, because I tell newbies all the time, if there's a deal you like and it's in an area that you like, there's a price or there's a financing strategy that makes it a deal. So, talk to people, make offers.
And we're back on the MHP Exchange Podcast. I am your host, Frank Rizzo. Joining me is my partner in the podcast, partner in communities, Eric Busuttil. How are you today, Eric?
Good day today, Frank.
Good day?
Yeah.
Eric just got back. You were out last night. You just got in, slid right into the podcast. That's why we love Eric. We have a phenomenal program for you today for those listening. But before we get into that, the MHP Exchange Podcast brought to you by the MHPExchange.com. That is your place to go for opportunity, news, education, and of course, entertainment. You can find the podcast and our program, Trailer Park Turnaround, on that site. In addition, we have on that site Chat MHP, which is the industry's only AI personal assistant for you to find out any information you may need in the MHP space. So check out the MHPExchange.com. And if you like what you hear on this program, go to iTunes, go to Spotify, subscribe and like us, give us a rating, give us some comments. We'd love to get your feedback. So make sure you do that if you're listening to this program as well. Today, Eric, we have a great program because we have a great guest. Right. We have somebody who's joining us, and it's funny because this is somebody who I've spoke with multiple times throughout the last few years on just different deals, and it's funny how this business works because it's a very, in some ways it's very big, and then in other ways it's very small. Like and so you end up running into the same people on different sides. So there was a couple of opportunities that presented itself, and this gentleman and myself, we've kind of talked about different deals together. We never really connected on anything, but he's a community owner in some of the same markets we operate in. So we are going to welcome Tim Woodbridge to the program today. Tim is a owner, operator, and manager of his parks. He owns 9 communities in 3 states, 4 states, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi. It's got about 273 pads. And he's got a really, really interesting story of how he got here. So I want to welcome Tim to the program. How are you today, Tim?
Hey, Frank. Hey, man. Thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And, hear about some interesting stories. I do love the mobile home park game because there's, lots of ups and downs. I mean, in over time, it's all up, right? But in the moment, sometimes you're like, how am I going to figure this out? Who can I reach out to? Who can help me? So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for being part of the program. We appreciate you being on. Before we get started and talk about, maybe some of what you do or what you're looking for in the space, how did you get here?
So I was a nurse for a while. I'm still a licensed nurse, just not practicing. I didn't know anything about real estate. I didn't know, how people got wealthy. I didn't know anything like that. I am from Southern California, was in Phoenix for a while. My ex and I broke up. I moved across the country to live here in Charleston, South Carolina with my brother, just because I needed a change. And I moved across the country. I started reading, and I started reading a lot more. And I saw Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I mean, whatever, 6 years ago ish is the first time the word asset or liability had come like into my world. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is life changing. And so, long story short, just read a whole ton, listened to a lot. Heard uh heard Frank Rolfe on the Bigger Pockets podcast and said, yeah, I like that because of this. Like that's what I want to pursue. It took a long time to figure out what I wanted to do, but I found that and then I pursued it. Frank said, check out my partner's website, mobilehomeparkstore.com. And I was like, that's such a BS website. There's no way that that's a real website. It's such a scam name. And I went on, I found a park. It was like an hour 15 from where I live. And it had been on the market for a while. Just build a little bit of rapport with the guy, made an offer. We came, to terms and closed it. It was difficult to close. It was 10 to 36 occupied for a newbie park owner. So it was very difficult, but we got it done, man. And then I just have figured it out along the way.
So Tim, and that was your first real estate deal?
Yeah, I mean, I had like homes here and there,
Okay.
but like the first investment.
Tell us about that mobile home park.
Yeah, dude. So 10 to 36 occupied. They're all individually deeded, so it's different than a lot of other like, just big commercial pieces of land. Yeah, saw it was on the market for a while.
So let's back up a little bit because we have people who listen to the program, some people just starting, some people more advanced. So when you mean individually deeded, right? You have 36 individual lots in that park.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Which can create some challenges for those that don't know in terms of getting financing, right? So you probably learned that, but for those out there looking for an opportunity, did you know that going in and realize that, hey, that becomes an opportunity for me because the owner at that time, maybe their options for a purchaser become challenged, right? Like they've got to deal with somebody who's willing to take on 36 individual lots.
Well,
I'm not that smart, to be honest. I'm not that like especially at that time. I was just like, I like this, this is what I want. I want a mobile home park. So I didn't use it to my advantage of like, oh, I should be getting some kind of discount on it. All I knew is I took Frank's rough calculation and that gave me like a way low offer price compared to what he was asking.
Frank, you kind of jumped over what I was trying to say here or trying to understand. I mean, balls. I mean, guy never bought a mobile home park. He's a nurse in South Carolina, and he jumped right in. And that's just, I wanted to hear the story. And you went right to the big picture, Frank.
Oh.
So
I actually thought that was the little picture.
Don't put in front of me.
I hope I'm witness to the first fight on the podcast. That's what I want.
But when I hear stories like that, I'm just like, awesome, man. I mean, we've been in real estate and I've been in mortgages, had some real estate prior to getting involved in this space. And I was just, my first couple of deals, I just even coming with the experience, Frank's experience, I was still just couldn't believe that I got involved in the space, not knowing that much because it's different than, most real estate sectors. And good for you, man. I mean, the only real way you're going to get the experience under the belt is by doing that. So, and that's great for other people to hear, right? People who read about it or, see our show or watch our show. I mean, when we first started in the business and we were talking about mobile home parks, I mean, in New York, there are no mobile home parks. I mean, there's zero in New York City. So our group of, people were around and realtors. And when you talk about a mobile home park, it's like, wow. So when I hear someone like yourself doing something like that, that's just, awesome. And I just love to hear how it happened and how you went through with it and got through with it. I mean, it's amazing. So good for you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I definitely credit my my ignorance to a lot of like the ability to take the action because I mean, it was listed for $395, it's small, it's rural. Lot rent was $125.
Okay.
Per Frank's calculation, it should have been $114. And so I offered that. And again, like I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'd offer that now. I think I gave Frank some low offers. Who knows? But it's something about the ignorance that I'm just like, I don't know exactly how I'm gonna do this, but I know I want to do this, and I'm gonna figure out as I go.
Well, that's a good entry price and good entry size. I would have got to Frank's point right about now. With the individual deeds, it does create some challenges, right? But I think because of the size of it, I'm sure it's not a huge issue, I would imagine, because you're obviously doing well with it, right?
Yeah, so now I like that it's individually deeded. Um, like before, so I didn't know the difference. I don't even know if I knew that a mobile home park was one piece of property versus individually deeded. Looking back, um, I called all the banks around here, all the banks around the park, and I said, do you do this? And they didn't even loan on mobile home parks, and not, especially not to someone new. So it wasn't even a like, this is another conversation. Like, okay, how about a mobile home park individually deeded? No, the conversation was dead at mobile home parks.
So how did you get that deal closed then? So now here you come in, you made an offer at like 114 based off of your valuation cap. The owner wanted 399. So there's a big difference. How did you bridge that gap? And then how did that move forward?
So in the same conversation, like we're at lunch, right? When I make the offer and I say, I'm sorry, this is a lot lower than you had wanted. And I said 114. And he said, no, no, no. And I was like, oh, okay, well, fair enough. Well, I came up here. I visited someplace I'd never been to. I did something I never did. So that's a win for me. And he said, I can't sell any for anything less than 250. And I said, if I can do the 250, will you sell it to me for that? And he said, yeah. And I said, will you finance that to me? Because I had been hanging out with a lot of a lot of old timer real estate guys that I mean are still great friends of mine. And that's all their game was, seller finance, seller finance. So it was like being around that so much, it just came out naturally. Anyway, he said, I'll finance 50,000 of it. I said, okay, okay. So I called all the banks. They all said no. I went back to him and I said, man, I don't know what to do. And he said, I went to high school with a banker, with a vice president of a local bank. Let me get you in touch with them. And so me and my partner, because I had brought someone in at that time, we went up to talk to the banker. And he looked at the financials and he said, yeah, I'll give you 70%. So we had the 70%, which was 175,000. We had him, the seller, carry 50,000, interest only at 5%. And then my partner brought in 25, and then I paid closing costs. And
Wow.
it was like magic, dude.
That is
That's
incredible.
great.
So now you own the park, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably exciting and scary all at the same time.
Yeah.
What do you do? Because you have a huge infill project for your first deal. I mean, you set yourself up for probably the most difficult thing an operator can do, right? And we've got infill projects and we've done that, but infilling day one, right? Not knowing what you don't know. What was the process of that deal and how did that work out for you?
I didn't know what I was gonna do, but I knew I needed to get homes in. So like I just kind of made that my obsession on like how can we do this and just figuring out the different ways. But this was the end of 2019 when we closed. 2020 hits and then COVID hits. And then Legacy Homes send out an email and they say, "Hey, we want to keep our factories open, so we will finance 100% of these homes to park owners with vacancies." We needed to buy a minimum of six. Uh, we ordered seven. And yeah, I mean, just little happenstance, just keeping my ear to the ground and seeing that.
Called bowls.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But it was crazy, because so we got the homes in, and one of the guys at my local RIA who's in mobile homes, he hooked me up with a friend who does setup. And I'm a nurse. I don't really know the cost of any of these things. I get an estimated, cost of it from the guy, and I was like, we don't have anything. We had like a capital line a $15,000 capital line for 7 homes. And so a lot of stuff was me either putting stuff on personal credit cards or me pre-selling and taking that money and, and then giving it to the guy who's setting it up and just like shit, how am I going to get this money for this guy? And yeah, just figuring it out as I went. And it was super stressful, man. It was super stressful, but I got it done and then I got them filled and yeah, good learning experience.
Is your partner active in the project, or does he have any experience with this?
No, so we were both new. He isn't active really anymore. A fun story for his how active he is, or how he was. So when we bought it, I heard about WaterScope, and the old guy, the old seller, was going and manually reading all of these water meters and billing people back. And this is an hour 15 from where I live. It's just not as feasible. So it's like, oh my gosh, WaterScope. And so Nate and I, my partner and I, went up there and installed all the water meters over like 3 days. And he's got like oh, what's his business? It's like a construction type of business. So that's his experience. He's good at that. And so like together we got it done. But it's funny, every day of those 3 days, we would go until we were tired. And when we were tired, we said one more. And then the one more always caused a giant waterfall, or a fountain where it's just like a cluster. And like all we wanted to do was fix that one and go home. But, there's a big fountain and like we're bleeding money basically. So we got to fix that before going home and the stores are closed and man, just good stories.
That's the best learning, just doing it, just getting in there, doing it.
There's no other way.
There's no other way.
There's no other
Right?
way.
There's no other way. If you're going to be an operator, there's no other way to do it than getting your hands dirty, and rolling up your sleeves and doing the work. So, obviously you had a note with the seller, you had a note with the bank. Where did you exit that? What was your exit on that? Like, how did that look?
Yeah, so we brought 7 homes in. We filled them up with lease with an option to purchase tenants. That's my favorite thing to do with homes. Um, so was that we started with 10, we got 7 legacy homes, and then 2 organic move-ins. So we were up to 19 at 36. Um, I went in for a refi with the same bank, the same local bank who gave us the original loan. And the appraisal, so purchased at 250, the appraisal came back 14-ish months later at 570.
Wow.
So that was the magic that I saw. I was like, this is what I need to keep doing. It's crazy.
And was that the moment you were hooked in? Was it, was this the moment you said, all right, that's it. I'm leaving my job and going to do this full time? Or what
No.
transpired that? Because you had, like, think about it. We were in the business, right? Where you had a job previously, or right, you have a job, you have a license, you did all this. Now you're making the pivot to do this full time. Like, what was that? How does that, you jump in and take that risk?
So, I mean, for a long time, I didn't take any money from that first park. I didn't take any management. I didn't take anything. Um, so let's see. I bought the first park. It took me 2 years to get into my second park, and that one wasn't cash flowing at all. And then I was on the verge of getting my third before I said, okay, like I've got some real estate. I need to figure this out, and I quit nursing. So, I mean, I did both, for a long time. I worked my 312s and then sometimes another 8 at nursing. And then I did this around that. I figured out how to do this and, just made space for both things. It was very busy, but also I'm very busy now. So, whatever, you just figure out how to do it.
So now that I mean, you have several hundred lots now. Do you have a, specific model now, that you like to follow when you're looking for a community and what your plan is on moving forward? Is it the same every time, or are you doing different things with different parks?
different things with different parks. So, I mean, my buy box has evolved into actually having a buy box. I had nothing like that when I first got in. So, I'm looking for 40 plus lots, no wastewater treatment plant, no lagoon until I work with someone who's really smart with lagoons, and then I might. And, whatever, well, septic's fine, whatever. Park owned homes, fine. I'll convert them to tenant owned homes. Um, so yeah, I mean, things evolve, but also like a lot of a deal dictates things. So say someone has a deal and what really worked for me last year, people would have deals and the numbers didn't work unless the seller got very creative and carried back like either a promissory note in one or like a equity position in another. And it's just, your interest rates are high. So how can we make this work? Like, I'm not going to just sit on the sidelines. I get bored with stuff like that, right? And I'm not big enough yet to just be like, I'm going to sit on the sidelines. Ha ha ha. I'm like, no, let's look at deals because I tell newbies all the time, if there's a deal you like and it's in an area that you like, there's a price or there's a financing strategy that makes it a deal. So, talk to people, make offers.
And well, that's the key on it, right? You can't be embarrassed to make an offer that you think where you think the value is, right? Because there's no bad real estate, there's only bad prices. And you go in there and you find we typically will look at a property and there's a value that it makes sense for us, regardless of what the property is or the work that's needed. Here's where it makes sense for us, right? And if it doesn't make sense for you at that number, that's fine. But here we are. And if the deal's still there, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months from now, maybe we can revisit it. But you did that on your first deal and you just said, hey, this is my number. You took the position of, hey, I'm going to make an offer, which sounds crazy, right? You offered 114,000, but you were able to make the deal work, right? Well, and that's the key.
And he said it, talk to people, right? Especially if, you're an owner operator, new, you're typically buying from someone that, owns the community for a while. They've gotten older, their kids don't want it, right? And, they're just tired and, it's just time, right? You really got to explain to them this. You got to explain to them that, hey, these numbers don't make sense unless we could figure out together how to, come up with a creative finance package or, you gotta talk it out with them. And another thing is when you're talking to a seller, I mean, we've made great relationships with all of the sellers that we've had, and they want to know who's buying that community that they've had for 50 years. And they want to know that you're vested and that, you're asking the right questions, and they like to help someone take it off their hands typically, right? To know that, they're carrying the torch of what they built, so, you what you're doing is obviously working, but very important to continue to do it like that.
Instead of trying to like beat someone up and being like, oh, BS, there's no way that it's worth that. I in my head started looking at like, it doesn't matter like as much, what it's worth or whatever. I mean, it matters on exit, sure. You can't buy crazy with trying to flip in a couple of years. But like in my head, how can I get on the same side of the table as them? It's not me versus you. It's us versus the problem of you trying to sell to me. So how can we work on this together?
Well said.
That's a great strategy because then when you're having that conversation, sometimes it's not just a concession. We're both trying to get to the same spot. And we've had that, and we just had that on a recent, property that we closed on. We were both trying to get to the same spot, but there's issues that have to be addressed, and we're willing to address that, but we need your assistance in addressing this. So, and I think explaining the situation and walking through it guides the entire process from that. Now, and we always ask this question to people who come on because this is such a different business, right? You could get into the real estate, and I've seen a lot of sophisticated real estate people get into MH and then just be like, the moment they step a foot in, they want to step right out because they're not equipped for it. So you initially stepped into which I'm sure you probably had people saying, "What are you doing buying a trailer park?" Right? Like
Yeah.
you probably had like, "What are you doing?" But was there a moment, like an aha moment, where you're like, "Wow, this is the spot for me, and I don't want to be in anything else. Like I just want to be in MH."
I mean, I wish I could say it was that refi where like all of a sudden that all that value was created just from me doing work, right? But fast forward, I quit nursing. I have 3 parks. Yeah, I had just closed the third park, and so I quit nursing. Mobile home park, like getting cash flow from a mobile home park isn't as fast as I would like. So I need to get some cash to replace that. I mean, I quit. I had a lot of money saved. So I mean, it's just me, not married, anything like that. So I had a little bit of ease to quit. Um, but I also had the like, oh crap, I've had a job for my whole life with a consistent paycheck. So I need more consistent cash flow coming in. So I ventured into the single family wholesale space and just totally failed, man. Lost like 48 grand paying for like marketing and VAs and blah, 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 blah. Uh, and the thing is, like I didn't love the process. I loved the idea of money. I love like I have some good friends who make a killing wholesaling single family houses, and that's what I loved. I didn't love the process of it. I didn't, I I realized that I need to get into something where even on the crappy days, even the problems, the things that suck, it's like this is the direction I want to go towards. So you know, 2023 was, or sorry, 2022 was a bit of a like me scrambling to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I ended the year and I was like, I need to go back into mobile home parks. I have no more cash. I'm racking up some credit card debt. I was even actually applying for nursing jobs because I was like, this isn't working. And a few things happened, buying some bigger things and, taking actually acquisition fees to pay myself and, taking more of the management fees that, paying myself for the work that I was doing and the team that I had built. Um, and yeah, last year I was just like, this is what I need to do. I need to focus on this. Uh, there's a million shiny objects. I want all of them. So I need to put my blinders on. I need to just focus on mobile home parks. And yeah, I mean, I bought 7 parks last year. So
Wow, that's yeah, and that was last year doing that in a year that was typically slow.
mhm.
Acquisition wanted to be able to say that you were able to acquire 7 parks last year. It's a pretty big number. So good for you. Congratulations.
Thanks.
What's next for Tim Woodbridge? Like what are you doing now? What are you looking for? What's your plan for 2024 and beyond?
So my plan for 2024 is I mean, buy more, right? Buy more. I got a 118 unit in Alabama under contract. I just got a 100 unit in upstate South Carolina, Spartanburg area under contract. So working on both of those. Also working on the property management business, the in-house property management business, and getting everything really dialed in terms of roles, responsibilities, SOPs, everything like that. Getting the right people in the right seats. When I only had 3 parks, it wasn't an issue. When I, bought 7 more last year, it's become an issue. So, figuring out uh, creating the business right instead of just BSing it my way through. So
Great story. Great story, Tim.
Tim,
thank
that's
you.
a real great story, inspirational story about getting started. Um, Kind of changed the direction of where you were going, which is what I think this space does, not just for the operators, but when you've got a really well-run community, you could change the direction of the people down on the ground, which is super. And we appreciate you being on, Tim. I think you had a great story to tell. Tim Woodbridge. What's the name of your company, Tim? So everybody knows.
Um, so it's a fledgling company, right? So WC Management Group.
WC Management Group.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to be on the lookout for WC Management Group. I think Tim outbid us on that 100 unit in South Carolina. We're going to have a conversation about that offline.
Love
Uh,
it.
and that's how we know Tim. Like we've gone back and forth on deals throughout the year. Tim, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story about how you got started, because at the end of the day, this program, we want to, advise people on how to get started. And the best thing is just to go out there, find a deal, make offers, talk to people. This is what I got from this. Tim also had a network of people he was already talking to beforehand. So he knew certain things to do, like seller financing, if you had to make a deal work, which is another key point. And I thought that was a real great story. And as Eric would say, what does he have?
Balls.
That's it.
Love it. Thank you, guys.
So if you like the program, tune into the MHP Exchange. Frank Rizzo, my co-host Eric Busuttil. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on LinkedIn. Like, comment, share, and again, if you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, rate and send comments. We love to get your feedback. That's how we create some of the programs going forward. Again, Frank Rizzo from the MHPExchange.com. Thank you for listening.
Tim, nice having you, Tim.
Thank you so much.